Okay, I think we're going to start now. I'm in Kuntres Umaayon, Mimer Tes Vav, which is page 52. If you can scroll down to that. I'm moving on to I skipped a piece because we basically had it in the Likutim Aran that we did the last two times. Now I want to move to another piece here. These are like very, very straightforward ideas. Okay, if we have it, I'll start reading. It's in page 52 of the thing you have. It's a Mamar Tetvav Perik Aleph. I'll start. Hinei ha'adam basher hu adam tzarich ladat. Man, as much as he is man, should know. V'kol ha'adam sheyesh lo moach b'kodkodo yodea, and any person which has the proper brains in his skull will know this. Asher ha'adamu b'chir nivraim. Man is the chosen of the created. Asher bara, which God brought into being. Bara, as we know, Ramban explains in Peshat Bereshit, bara is yesh mi'ayin, bringing from naught into existence. Okay, Yatzar is gave him a specific form. Okay, so God brought him into existence and gave him a certain form. Lo levad b'tzva haaretz elegam b'tzva hashamayim. He's not just a chosen above all the species of what was created of the hosts. Tzva means the hosts, the multitudes of what's created on terra on this earth, but even all the tzva hashamayim equals even in olamos elyonim. The Adam is b'chir anivraim, even of Malach Gavriel, Malach Michael, etc. He's above and beyond all. V'hu ha'adam bri'ah tichonit mikol nivraim kulam. He is basically the middle point which connects all of creation, elyonim and tachtonim. He is the man. Reb Chaim Volozhin discussed this at length, as one would know in Shar Aleph, but here you have it here. This is what man is supposed to be. You're the middle point which has to join and bring them all together into oneness. All that God created from naught have both guf and nefesh. Now, the idea behind, yes, even a malach, etc., what you call guf has a certain type of form. It doesn't have to be a form in the physical sense the way you know it, but can think of a conceptual form, if you may. Since I don't know the properties of metaphysics, I can't describe what exactly a form, what is composed of in metaphysics, but there's form. It's an idea, okay? So there you have it. So he says, man, including them, him balei guf v'nefesh. Nefesh means to say that which gives it existence, being. There's no in this. This is the equalizer between the hosts of Aretz and hosts of Shemaim. The imeyot, although it may be true, asher tzva shamayim chaluk mitzvah aretz, is obviously the host of the supernal existence is differentiated from the, shall we say, the material existence. Tzva ba'aretz bara kadosh baruch hu otam me'akavat haba yesodot. This is very Aristotelian. We know that at least their understanding, also the Ari and the Zera Kadosh, that the primary elements from which God created are divided into four. Eish, Mayim, Ruach, V'Ofer, Kamoshi Katuv, Osem Alachav Ruchot, Mishartav, Eish Lo'eit. That happens to be the lashon of the pasuk. B'chol zeh, Hinei Bezeh Mishtavim Tzva HaShamayim and Tzva Haaretz. But it is true that the Tzva HaShamayim is not made from the Arba Yesodot, that they come from another composition, but they have one thing in common, and that is Guf V'Nefesh, V'Hainu, meaning to say, Imeyod Tzva HaShamayim Bar Amma Yesodot Adakim Ve'esh V'Ruach, so to speak, and not from Mayim V'Ofer, because Zeh Hinei Gam Em Balei Guf. Utzva haaretz imeyot shebaram ba'akavata yisodot, by mixing of the minute of the yisodot of mayim va'ofer gam kein b'chol zeh im gam kein b'chiyat nefesh. They have what you call a life force which is not tangible. Rak havdelu b'tivam, it depends. But the only difference between tzva shamayim and tzva haaretz lies in their nature. The tiv'i tzva hashamayim u ba'agrat hatzura lachomer. Tzva hashamayim is created in which the form equals that which it really means is it overpowers its matter. In others, here, let's explain. This is a typical Aristotelian sentence. We talk about of Chomer and Tzura. We talk about matter and form. When we talk about form, I don't just mean are you long or are you short. It also means the idea which makes it into oneness. I will explain. You look at a body, a face, okay? You see it as one. You call it a face. You don't see it as components. There are components there. Wow, the amount of cells found in one little iota of skin is beautiful, okay? There's no question about it. But you don't look at it as fragmented. You see it as one because there's an idea called face. There's a unifying factor. That is what in philosophy is called the tzura. The tzura, that which gives it into one, makes it one form. Okay, that which the way you see things in oneness. Chaimer is the matter. The matter can be terribly fragmented. I look at the Klal Yisrael. As far as Chomer is concerned, it's probably the most fragmented nation that I know about. 10 Jews or 10 Shtiblach. On the other hand, we say, Mi ka'amchi Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. What does that mean? You're talking not in reality, but in essence. We all basically, as far as our inner identity of our form, of our idea of that, Nishmas Yisrael is one. We are one. Actually, we are one neshama in gufim mechulakim. The problem is that in this world, the guf is mizgaber ala nefesh. The chaimer mizgaber ala tzura. Right, our tzura is oneness, yet our chaimer is very fragmented. And therefore, we perceive things through the fragmentation. And that's what he said, that Tzva Shamayim, the Adarabah, how they perceive reality is in unity. They perceive it in one. They have no problem of seeing oneness. As we, the opposite, see things in a fragmented way, we see things externally. And therefore, we see things in a way, well, external equals the chomer. And the chomer, the matter, by definition, is fragmented. That's the only real difference between you and a malach. It's how you see things. It's how you experience reality. Do you experience reality? I'm trying to say the more that one experiences oneness, the one that takes his physics and sticks it into his head and starts seeing it that way, brother dear, that is, you're getting closer to the perception of reality of a malach than of a human. The human sees things superficially, functionally. It's very fragmented. It is the broader, the deeper person, which is closer to Tzva Shamayim. He sees things that way. That's why the Rambam and Ramban both write that Moshe Rabbeinu's perception of reality was as such. He was closer to being an angel than being a man. That's what he writes. Perik Lamed Zayin in Eob State. The Ramban says it mefurish. That's why he had constant hashgacha pratis, because he was constantly thinking about the tzur, about the idea of things, not about the fragmented externalities. Let's go next paragraph. You must understand that the body and the nefesh, that spiritual entity which is your life force, are very much coupled together and they're parallel. The hainu means to say, imeyot, although it may be true, asher nefesh v'aguf, hine mitzad mutam atzmim mafachim zeh mizeh. As far as their essence, one would see them as two polar opposites. The nefesh ruchani. The nefesh is something what you call metaphysical. V'aguf gashmi, and the body is purely material. V'ruchani v'gashmi b'mutam atzmi arei mafachim zemizeh. One would try to understand when I say something material in verses to something which is metaphysical. This is they are totally two polar opposites. That may be true. They may be two opposite, but they're like a hand into a glove. They fit. They are perfect matches. That's what it means, makbilim. They are parallels, and they fit. Matimim. They fit perfectly. The Zoy echara pliot. The pliot mim deim yitbarach. This is one of the wonderful things of the wonderful. All-encompassing God, the fact that he can make something into naught and yet he can put them together. Shurak, Ooh. This lies in the bosom of the Barishu Maflila Asot Mekasher Ruchniut Bigashmiut. What is he referring here to? He's referring to a Ramah. The Ramah in beginning of Arachaim and the bracha Reifer Chobaso Maflila Asot. So what is Maflila Asot? You know, he heals all body because it allows our bodies get very sick with toxic waste. And thank God our bodies are constantly healed by expelling the toxic waste. Thank God those things work. Maflila Asot does wonders. What is the wonder? So there's very interesting. You can see reflections of understanding of science at the time. The Beis Yosef writes, he says he doesn't understand. The body is full of air. Somehow they had this understanding that man's oxygen lies in him, almost like an oxygen tank, and he's breathing from himself. This is probably the understanding of the Zohar that it says, "Vayipach be'apay nishmas chaim," the God exhaled into the corpus of man a soul of life. So the Zohar says, "Man de nafach," he who exhales, mitichioto nafach, he exhales from that which is in his inner self. This may be a basic understanding of science at the time, that man he didn't think of the inhaling process. You're nothing more than you're like a bee. You're taking in oxygen and bringing it out. No, they understood that you're a tank of oxygen. So man de nafach min dochiyaton nafach, and what does it say over there? So the Beis Yosef says, how come the body is so full of holes? How come the oxygen isn't leaking? How can we still have all this oxygen? He said, this is mafli lasot. It's a pella. We are a balloon full of oxygen with so many holes. I mean, to me today, that's like it is funny, but that's the Beis Yosef. It's more down in Shulchan Aruch. You can look it up yourself at the beginning of Arachaim. Once again, I want us to remember that our understanding of God and of psukim and of Chazal must be taken into account that God gave these psukim to man with the tools that he had at the time to interpret it. If the cutting edge of science at the time was like that, God expected you to use that perception to understand this psukim. So I don't ask me, oh, it says Mefurish Hashemayim, different things that seem to be pointing out that the sun is going around the earth for different psukim. What do you want, God's sake? God spoke to man in a language man comprehended at the time. That's not a science manual. He's not telling you the objective truth. He's telling Dibra Torah Lashon Bnei Adam, literally, as the Rambam writes. Rambam writes, the Torah wrote a language that the typical Girgashi farmer, which wasn't exactly an academic, would understand. That was the language of the time. So I don't bring psukim, the grade. Well, the church somehow took the scripture as literal and burnt people for this. Good old poor Galileo. No, without that, this is never pashut. Those who I say this because today the world is changing. When I was growing up, science was a good friend of religion. And now it seems to be, that science is an enemy of religion. If you mention the word fossil, they'll put up a sign on you. You'll be part of the making of the Gadol. I don't know what, poor Slifkin and all, etc. This is, what can I tell you? It was a nicer world back then in the 60s where science was a friend of God. Now I think the world is going crazy. That's all I have to say. I feel lonely. Alan, I feel lonely.
I'm a disciple. I
feel very lonely. Lonely, I'm not misunderstood, but I'm lonely. Okay. Anyway, so science is the best friend of that. Remember that when you go to our mitzvah, don't give them some chai and JNF, trees in Israel. Give them a telescope or a microscope. Let them understand the beauty of science and that God is there. Anecdote. That's the side. But remember, this is like my mantra. Science is the best friend of religion. Right. So it says over here, one has to understand that the goof I want to explain. So therefore, these interpretations of the science at the time, that's what God wanted you to understand. Equals, it's a true interpretation of the pasuk. It doesn't mean it's true in science. It's a true interpretation of the pasuk. The pasuk gives you messages, moral, ethical, legal messages, which must be understood with the tools that you have at the time. If you don't think that God expected me to, in the years of Matan Torah, to understand astronomy, that we have post Hubble. I mean, for goodness sakes, I know he definitely, what can I tell you? The apple didn't fall on Newton yet. What do you want me to do? But what did they understand? Goodness sakes. Let's be very honest. These people that attribute the cutting edge of science to Chazal, this is a bit comical to say the least. Rambam already writes in Moreh Nevuchim that the Chazal were not scientists. Rambam writes explicitly that the science of Chazal is nothing more than what they took from the cutting edge of scientists which were available to them at the time. So all these other people that somehow attribute, oh, they knew this, knew that. Again, yeah, of course, you learned Trefus, so you know how to do brain surgery. This is like Marvel Comics. Don't take this seriously. This is like, it's a bizarre. Anyway, maybe I'm old. I'm talking, old time religion, but that's the way it was when I grew up because we believed in Maimonides. Okay, today there are other books, I guess. They're probably in Yiddish. Anyway, so let's go. I'm in a mood today, guys. I got news for you. I'm angry. Lately, I've become an anti-Semite. In this country over here, where people are saying things which are so against halacha and Yiddishkeit, I wonder, I guess I'm one of the few people that were at Sinai, and they were all at a hill nearby. What can I tell you? Hi, Aaron. Haven't seen you in ages. Okay.
Hey, Rabbi, how are you?
Oh, Beirish, how you doing? Weiter. Let's go further. So anyway, so going back to this, we must understand. So when we talked here about 4 elements, get used to it. We're talking about an understanding at the time, which has a truth in it. What is that truth exactly? I don't know. I don't know what it has to fit with science, chemistry of today. I once was discussing with a major thinker, Manitou. I don't know if anybody heard of him. Dr. Leon Ashkenazi was a great thinker. He was his scout's name was Manitou. It's an Indian name. Okay, it was Dr. Leon Ashkenazi, a broad thinker. I actually learned a bit of Eitz Chaim by him for 2 years. A very interesting man. Our classroom had a lot of people. Rav Hadari was one of the students, a few professors. It was an interesting group of people. Anyway, so he was trying to put the 4 elements into the different parts of the atom. Okay, so I said, listen, this is very sweet today, and another 10 years from now, science is going to develop more. It's futile. I don't have to put it into anything. It's enough to say this was a truth at the time. So this is a message and an idea that God wanted me to know at the time. He didn't expect me at that point in time to think that the earth actually goes around the sun. He wanted us to understand, like common person, the sun runs around the earth. What can I do? He didn't put the Hubble during the times of Avram Avinu. Okay, you know what I mean? So therefore, don't get nervous when they tell you that the 4 elements are connected. The 4 oisius of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Ari talks about this at length. It's a truth. But what exactly anybody who knows chemistry knows you can cut numbers are nothing more than categorization. So you want to cut it, if I recall the amount of elements in chemistry, I don't even know how many there are now. I think there were much less when I was growing up doing my regents. There's a lot of, every day there's a new element. It's a question of categorization, so I couldn't care less what the number is. If it seems to be that the number 4 is significant in metaphysics, so it happens to fit with Aristotelian elements, bravo. And if it doesn't, Baruch Hashem, the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, which has definitely 4 elements to it, 4 Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, and that's a metaphysical truth. Okay, so don't get nervous when you look at rabbinic usage of Aristotelian, and this goes very straight. Mafli lasais. I'm trying to say, this guy thought that man had an internal oxygen tank. Funny. He really knew nothing about biology. I mean, it's really, really funny. You look at the Gemara. The Gemara Nida, they didn't really do serious anatomy of the women's reproductive system, Brother dear, until the early 1800s. You really want to know the truth? If you look at manuals written in the late 17th, Dr. Weingarten, you can attest to this. You look at the primitive knowledge of women's gynecological apparatus over there. It was pathetic. Ad Kedei Kach, the Gemara Nida describes the innards of the female system. I mean, it really does not reflect what's happening there. I know what to tell to you. At the time, they obviously did not cut up people. There's a Tshuva L'Chasam Sofer on this. He's trying to defend it, so he writes, well, now they're cutting up goyim, so maybe their bodies are different because they eat nevelis and trephus. It's Zaymer Michael. We cut up a lot of Jews, and they got the same thing. No, the Terence is the science of Chazal is limited to the perception of reality at the time, as my mind is writes in his guide. Why can't we just? No one has to be perfect. You have to be cutting edge of science at the time. That's all it has to be. Nothing more than that. Poor Slifkin, he got slaughtered because of this Narishkeit. So this is a davar pashut, and I'm Orthodox. So you can know, like Anthony said, and Brutus is an honorable man. I'm an honorable man, and I'm Orthodox, and I'm telling you this is normal Orthodoxy. Okay, so you can quote me. Weiter. So therefore we have these Aristotelian differences. So then what is the special pellet? So there are Moss says, what does it mean? Mafli lazos? He says the fact that he connects metaphysical reality with physical reality. There's no glue there. They are in two different realms. How do they connect? How does the neshama create with the body? That is a pellet. That makes no sense. In order to have two things connecting, you somehow have to have something in middle, an emulsifier between them. Even oil and grease and fat and water needs soap, which is an emulsifier, which has properties both of oil and of water, which is your soap, which thus allows the water to connect to the grease molecules, and therefore it removes the grease from your body. That's what you're doing when you're soaping yourself. This story that now they have this liquid soap that makes a lot of sense. Most of that's shtusim. They're playing on you. Okay, good old fashioned bar palmolive. That's what you need. Okay, yeah, I'm just telling you. By the way, okay, this liquid soap isn't soap. It's bubble bath. That's all it is. So people think there's a lot of suds. You get clean. It's nothing to do with it. Okay. Anyway, but this is that. It's an emulsifier. That's what it is. There has to be some middle point between them. And there is no emulsifier between the nefesh and the guf. They don't meet. What is the emulsifier? The emulsifier is Ritzoynei Yisborach. That's the mafli lasos that you're mekasha ruchni v'agashmi. That's Mufushin Ramah over there by Asher Yotzar. So the Gra says even more. The Mangaram explains more. The fact that the nefesh will stay in the body due to physical food. Why would the nefesh stay in the body due to physical food? I understand it nurtures the body. How does that nurture the connection between the soul and the body? If the soul is basically a metaphysical entity, how is that nurtured and stays in the body? How is that glued to the body? By eating food. Most the food can do is fix your body. Doesn't connect the soul to the body. And the Chanami, the Zohar Kodesh asked the question. The pasuk says that wisdom gives life to those who are wise, because that's the reason why the soul will stay in the body, because in the body it engages major wisdom that wouldn't have anywhere else. That's very nice. That I understand. So then the Zohar asks, so how come Talmidei Chachamim, if they have to eat, if all they should learn Tosfos, not bad. So say it's very nice of connecting the soul to the body, but if you won't eat, you won't have a body. So he hit the first that the food is there for the nurture of the body. So by a Talmid Chacham, by a real Talmid Chacham, which lives Chachma, the Chachma connects the soul to the body. What connects the soul to the body? A person who doesn't have Chachma, food. The food is there. Another pella. Not only do you connect the soul to a body, but you connect the soul connected to the body. As far as the soul is concerned, is the physical food. That is a pella. It's mafli lasos of pella plant. So this is what the Rebbe writes over here in the second paragraph. Zui achas ma plios sheplios bimdeim yizborach b'yin abrias yesh mi'ayim v'schabruson shehu rak v'chek abara. This is only in the bosom of God Himself, the Creator. Shemafli la'asot. He does this wonderful thing. Kimikasher ruchniyut b'gashmiyut. That He basically connects and ties together and merges the supernal, the metaphysical, with the physical. Ba'ofen ha'magbil. And in the sense that they're actually very parallel, umatim, they're very fitting, as if they're actually one. They're hand in glove. They are so stuck together, they are so merged harmoniously together. One would have thought it's one thing. What they have here, the marshal found in Zohar Kodesh, the nefesh is the oil, so to speak, that's the energy. Why is it called Oyer? Well, Oyer, why is God also called Oyer? Or Ein Sof, the infinite light. Why is the parable of God, of Ruchnis, called light? Or HaSeichel, also found in Chazal, the light of Chachma. Why is it called you're enlightened? The idea is very simple. It is the most, it is the Bria, the created form, which is the least tangible, at least in the eyes of Chazal. Can't actually touch light. Okay? You can't shape it. You can't do anything. It's light. Okay? It's a physical entity. It's a radiation of something, but it's something which is less and less and less tangible. So we want to use a marshal of the tangible world we have, of God, which expresses itself in the tangible world, yet is not tangible. We call him oil. We call him light. That's what it means. Shifat oroyid barach. He gives a lot of light. That means he gives himself, he injects into the physical reality supernal influence. So this is called oil. So the nefesh is the oil, and the kli, the vessel, is going to be obviously the body. Vagufu kli. Hine guf ha'adam shina kadosh baruch hu et ofen yitzirato mitzirat gufot shar nivraim asher bara. One looks carefully at the body of man and sees that God had changed its form than the form of bodies of other created forms that He made. The Kohen Ibrahim, all the created forms. I'm in the second line of the last paragraph of page 52. Kishama Kadosh Baruch Hu Oto HaMamar She'ech Ibrahim. When God said whatever He said Totzei Haaretz Deshar. He said Totzei Haaretz Nefesh Chaya Lemina. Miyad Nivra Gufam V'Nichnasa Bam Nafsham. There was no two-stage reality of having a soul and a body and connecting, but rather what it was, Totzei Haaretz Nefesh Chaya, what came out of soul, a body with a soul. They came out together. When God said, let the earth sprout forth a vegetation, Esev Mazria Zera, a vegetation, grass you can call it, which has interseeding, it's a self-multiplying mechanism, a fruit tree will generate more fruit, let me know, according to its species, which the seed is inherent in it, that's what happened. The earth sprouted forth all the different vegetation and the trees, all each one differently. With that energy of growth, it's organic matter. Equal to this is called a nefesh, and that we learned this once in Tanya, in Shar Yichud V'Emunah, that they are rediscussed both in even in domain, even in still life, rocks. There is an energy of existence. Should that energy, that's called the nefesh, should that nefesh leave the rock, then there would not be anything to glue together the elements of the mineral, and it would all disperse into gas. That which keeps it into the form the way it is, it's called the nefesh of the what is that nefesh? The fact, the ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it should be. When it says Vayar Elokim Ki Type, so Ramban explains, it means God said, I want it. That ongoing will is the ongoing glue of all the elements in the forms that they are. Should God choose to will it, it would choose to be. Okay, so that what you call La'olam Hashem, forever, perpetually, God Dvarcha, your words that you said, Naseh Tatzeh Azdesha, that you said Yehi Or, you said Yehi Rakia. There is a perpetual, constant utterance. This is discussed at length in the second half of Tanya. Something to remember, that even the concept of time and space are only expressions of constant will of God that they should be. Should God choose to will it, the constricted forms of time and space would cease to exist. By definition, if there is no more time and space, there's no more existence, for existence is nothing more than a phenomenon within time and space. That's what I exist means. I'm a phenomenon within time and space. Should God choose to stop willing time and space, he doesn't have to will you not to be. He has to will he has to destroy you. Stop willing time and space. That not just won't there be a future, but there won't be a past. The whole concept of past, present, and future is because God wants that reality to be. Stop willing time. Stop willing space. There never was time. The concept of was, future, past, and present would also cease to be. I want us to take this and understand how we are nothing more than expressions of an ongoing will of God. So this is what he says. He says when God brought these things into being, they came made the way it was. It says also, all the multiple species of what's found in the great universe of the ocean, they all were created just by the God saying, I want them to be. Hainu the Khan Ibrahim Hine Ofi Yitziratam. How were they created? Formed when God created them. Guf Ima Nefesh Achiyunit, with the nefesh of life equals the organic matter, as I explained, and not only organic, even mineral, as I said. Asher b'tochem yachad. That's all true by everything except for man. Masha'en Ken Ofi Yitziratam, and that includes also the Malachim. That includes Shrafim Meifani HaKodesh. God wanted them. They came, whatever form they had, whatever nefesh they had, became one. There's only one entity which God created, a two-pronged process. Masha'enken Ofi Yitzirat Adam Shina Kadosh Baruch Hu et Briyato. Here God changed the fashion. Everything else was done, made complete. Shebarat Chilat Gufo B'fnei Atzmo. He created first his body the way it was, Afar Min Adama. Shum nefesh chiyunit. I must say the honest truth. He is arguing. This is Pshuta Shemikra. He is arguing with a Sforna. The Sforna writes something really very interesting. Well, it's theologically very interesting. You know, when he was a major. He was definitely a serious medieval commentary. Wasn't any great philosopher, and we don't know him being a Talmudic person. I got to put this on the table. By the way, I saw Ramban 2 weeks ago that he writes on Ibn Ezra. He writes on him. Yeah, he talked. We see he's not a Talmudic person. That's what Ramban writes in Ibn Ezra. You write this, we can see you don't know Gemara. What can I tell you? You think you haven't been trained to think. Very sharp. Ibn Ezra is a real classical parshan, and the Ramban, knows how to cut his nose off. He says, yeah, but you're very cute, but you don't know your Gemara. Yeah, bist a good drasha for Chumash. Right. I just want you to know the Rishonim sometimes, they lash. Now the Ramban, Ravid is a common lasher, but Ramban, the noble man called Ramban, this was a very sharp report. Look up Ramban 2 weeks ago, you'll find it there. Okay, it's an interesting piece. I know a Rajba like that about the Ralbag. He calls him Eino Talmudi. Once again, boo, you have to remember these things. You shouldn't. Well, I'm telling you, but I don't usually say this in public. This will stay within the crowd. Hopefully, right, Johnny? It'll stay within the crowd. Okay. Okay. So we have over here that God. He writes over there when it says "Totzea Aris Nefesh Chaya Lemina," that included the Neanderthal. And then when it says Naseh Adam, he chose from that body, from those Neanderthals, he chose from them certain people or certain element that he decided to make them into a Homo sapien, and that is the Vayipach Be'apon Nishmas Chaim. So he actually writes that man was created in two stages. There actually are two stages, but the body was originally made like an animal. It had a nefesh achiyunis, but didn't have the capability of transcendent thought. It had functional thought, just like animals. And then he took the animal man, interesting, the Neanderthal man, and added to him transcendent thought, therefore making him into the capability of being a Homo sapien. That's a very interesting Sephorna. For me, I'm very happy to know at least he acknowledges that they're Neanderthals. I mean, I'm not sure that would go in Bnei Brak, but you know, he was Italian. That wouldn't go in Bnei Brak anyway. Anyway, but here the Rebbe writes he doesn't know that part about the Neanderthal. It's a Spurna, a very unique Spurna. He sees man as uniquely the only one which a body was made for man, as opposed to Spurna, which the body was made just like animals. So the animal on 2 feet, functional thinking. There's no difference between an elephant and a Neanderthal as far as he's concerned. The uniqueness of the Homo sapien is the capability of Tselem Elokim, which means transcendent thought. The Neanderthal is just like it's like the orangutan. It's all the same as far as he's concerned. So, but he doesn't know this piece. So he just says very simply. I'm going to read the paragraph again. Ma'ashenken ofin yitzirat ha'adam shina kadosh baruch hu et briato shebarat tchilat gufo b'fnei atzmo. He made the Homo sapiens body uniquely, separately, min ha'adama, b'li shum nefesh chiyunit b'tocho, with no life in it at all, as opposed to the Spurna says, no, everything came out like Neanderthal came out like with its nefesh chiyunit. No, he understands pshuta shemikra. He made a dead body. כמו שכתוב ויצא השם אלוקים את האדם עפר מן האדמה. ובתחילה היה גולם, he was just matter. There was no life in it at all, not at all like animals or anything else. Only after there was matter with form, then then he exhaled into him a light, a soul of life. His body didn't come forth from earth with the Ruach Chaim like all the other creations. כמו שהיה בכל הנבראים, אלא בתחילה ברא הקדוש ברוך הוא את גופו, וברא אותו מן החומר היותר עב וגס. He created him from, earth. He was really earthy, okay, from chomer gas, shehu domain. He took minerals and made the body out of it. Obviously, just to clarify, this must understand, I don't know how long this process took, and I don't understand exactly how it happened. It's very clear he didn't go into a sandbox and shape something, put a little water in it, then blew into it. That would be pathetic. Because how did he transform minerals into the texture of the derma? There had to go some kind of evolutionary process. It may be very accelerated. Some kind of a process of changing Offer Adama into Offer min Adam, which is real earth, into the skin and the body and all the different particulars of whatever the human body, skin, bones, etc., that's there. So one understands there was some kind of a process. God knows how long it took. It doesn't say. It doesn't say how it was done. But what we know clearly, but it didn't come from nothing. It wasn't the will of God, let there be a human body. No, there's a difference. You see, the animal's body, let there be an animal's body, and became an animal's body. Here he took previously the lowest element possible, which is domain mineral, and processed that into a body. If you notice what happens, it's a totally different way of doing things. You took a lowest thing possible, which is the mineral, and you made that evolved through, obviously, the intelligent designer made that into a body, okay? And then it has to live. It has to be organic. It can be dead, but it's a body. The transformation from offer to a body is we go through it. We don't do chap with that. That's wow. That's crazy. Then the easier part is to put a soul into it. That's something else. I have a functioning body. Now I'm going to give it life. Okay, I don't know how it works, but it seems much less complex than the first one that we roll through it. He made a body out of earth. It's like phenomenal. So he says, so that he did shu domain. Golem beli shum chiyut. Golem means nothing more than golem means non-finished product. It was dead with no life into it. It didn't have anything into it. This is very lowly for man. Lumat shar bruim. Think of man, how he was created in the lowest way possible. You took dirt and formed it into a body and only then put it into a soul, as opposed to this Dvar Hashem, which created the body and the soul in one. They came out a full body and a full soul in one. One has to understand why did this happen? Why is it that this process was specifically by the Homo sapien as opposed to all the other creations? One would have said this is the meaning, this is a change, which is not exactly mark up the uniqueness of the majesty of man. All that they all came from Afar, they never had a stage where they were nothing more than raw material. They were just bodies without souls. No, they came out living. No, it didn't work that way. Man started dead weight. That's how he started. You were dead weight. You were created dead. Bluntly. Okay? You were created dead. Only after that we transform from your natural state of dead into what? There's a second stage. And this is the man, which is the magic man, the middle point of creation. One wants to understand what this means. So he says, Hine tam hadavar. The reason we're going to Perek Bet. Masha Kadosh Baruch Hu shina ba'ofen yitzirat Adam, ba'ofen yitzirat gufo kol ba'achayim. Why? The kol ba'alei chayim bekomatam nivro b'tzivyonam nivro. They were all created, finished products. Adam nivra afar min adama. No, he was not created that way. He wasn't a finished product. He first was taken out of earth. Tchila nivra gufo. He just reiterated what he said before. First, his body was made. V'achar napo nishmato. Eino ligriuta. That's not saying something wrong about man. Ela adraba lemal yuta. This is saying this is the journey of man. You move from stage to stage. That's what it means. That's also a reason. What a soul can do. And now let's explain what this is. This is a beautiful piece describing once you realize what man is, how can you shortchange him by wasting your life? So he goes on. If we discuss the four different categories of which we categorize all created, which as we know are domain, still life, mineral, tzomeach, vegetation, things which grow, chai, that which is actually alive, animal world, etc., umedaber, and finally the Homo sapien, which speaks. One would say the lowest level of creation is that which doesn't even change. It's just mineral. And obviously the one which is most elevated and prized is that part of the creation which can articulate an idea and think. And since man is that the better part and the chosen of all creation, is because he is so special. That's why his body was made differently than everyone else. Why? Even the body, which God made man, which he took from Offer and Adama, which is really thick, as one would say, Morel Nishmat Adam. This is the indicator that the deep nishmas chayim of man is of the highest level. And this is something to remember. It's a very big yesod. Kol hagavah biyoter yored lamata mata yoter. Anything which is higher goes lower. You know, when something comes from a high point, it really falls down low. One must always see things. When one sees that there are things It's something we learned last week in Rav Nachman. We learned last week in Rav Nachman, if you recall, that there's God expresses himself in an orderly, logical fashion. And that's you do mitzvahs, good things happen. You do averis, not good things happen. And then we ask, well, how come there's St. Paul's in London? Why there's St. Peter's in Rome? Why is there all the Avodah Zorah, Kfirah, and you? What energizes that? It can't be without the will of God. And Reb Nachman discusses over there, if you recall, the two ma'amarim in the Asar Ma'amaris, Ma'amar Patuach and Ma'amar Satum. If you recall that. Ma'amar Patuach, Yehi Rakeh Yehi, this is Ma'amar Patuach. There are 9 let there be's in the Chumash. And there's one which didn't say let there be, but is the source of all creation, is Bereshit, Bara, Elokim, and Shemayim, V'Sa'aretz. The Gemara calls that Ma'amar Satum. Ma'amar Satum is God said it in his head, but didn't express it, so to speak. Ma'amar Patuach is where he articulated. We discussed at the time, what does it mean, Ma'amar Patuach, Ma'amar Satum? Well, let me explain it again. In the Midrash, the Geniza Midrash called Otiyot Rabbi Akiva, Ma'amar Patuach is expressed in the letter Mem, in the regular Hebrew letter Mem. The Hebrew found in the block letters, not the script letters in the Sefer Torah. That letter Mem, and the Ma'amar Satum, Bereshit Bara Elokim, is symbolized in the Ma'amar in the Mem Satuma, what you call the Schloss Mem, the Mem which is like a castle, it's closed. Okay, the Otiyot Rabbi Akiva, which is an old medrash, which we find 2 versions in the Geniza. It's very interesting. Discusses the Shira, which comes out of the letters. The one who wrote a very beautiful book on this is Rav Kook Zechar Tzadik Livracha. It's called Reish Milin. I think they even have a translation in English now. Reish Milin. He wrote it in London when he was the rabbi in the East End during the war, World War One. So he wrote it there. Reish Milin. It's an unbelievable book describing explaining Kabbalistically the shapes and the phonetic sounds of the letters and the vowels and the consonants. It's really interesting to see. So anyway, so over there he discusses this. So this is what Oisei Reb Kiva says. It says, God can never be king unless the 2 mems get together. The first mem, the mem which is open, is melucha. The second mem is memshala. What does that mean? There's God. Melucha means to say a king is someone which, as the Groy explains in Mishlei, it's a part of the people which the people chose, recognized within themselves. They elevated one person in that crowd and decide that they are subjugated to him. He's their sovereign. You have to have people deciding that you and me are one, and yet you are above us. We elevate you. Ein melech b'li am. That's what we do on Rosh Hashanah. We coronate the king by acknowledging his sovereignty. That's what Rosh Hashanah is supposed to be, Malchios. We acknowledge his sovereignty. That makes him into a king. Should we cease to acknowledge his sovereignty? He's not a king. He's a dictator. But he's not a king. A Moshel is a dictator. Moshel is a ruler. Kilashem amlucha u'Moshel ba'goyim. We accepted him. He's our king. The Goyim didn't accept him, so he is their dictator. He is their governor. He's their boss. That's Moshel. So basically, Memshalah is the Moshel. There's God, which is there, whether you like it or not. Okay, we don't always understand him. You definitely didn't recognize him. You definitely didn't acknowledge him. He's there. Sorry. And then there's the God, which he wants to have a relationship. He wants you to recognize him and accept him. That's your melech, okay? You're talking about that's sovereignty versus dictatorship, okay? That's basically what this is. Melech and Moshel. So Melucha is with the mem ptucha. Now, how is that symbolized? So Rav Kook explains because a mem is a framework in which there's a opening that you can go out. Now, an opening in a letter, the Gemara says in Menachas, is there to teach you, it symbolizes free will. You want to stay in the framework, you stay. You want to leave, leave. The Gemara says, why is it that the hay is a daled with a hanging yud? Why isn't the yud connected to the roof of the daled? So the Gemara says, because the open space at the bottom of the hay is to say free will. You want to leave the framework, c'est la vie, go, au revoir. But if you want to come back, you can't come back the same way. You have to go above the yud. Yud means intelligence, thought. Yud chokhmah. Okay, you have to recalibrate the way you see things before you enter back. You want to come back, you have to rethink things. You have to go through a yud, through a world of thought, and then you can go back in. You can't just walk in, oh, I'm sorry, I'm coming back. It's like, when you have an argument. Anybody married here? So you can understand, okay, brother dear. Once you did an oops, you can't just say sorry. You can buy 20 flowers on Valentine's Day. It ain't got. I think it was already, right? Valentine's Day was already. Okay, Saint Valentine. He was a martyr. Okay. Anyway, why is that dude love? I think they mix like a Greek holiday of Eros together with Saint Valentine. I don't know how Saint Valentine got into love. He was a Christian martyr. Okay, whatever. Anyway, so you can say sorry from there tomorrow ain't gonna help. You have to reassess. You have to reassess your relationship, in which that stupid thing that you did or said becomes nothing more than aberration. It has to be not important because we're deeper than that. That's what you're supposed to be doing with God. You're supposed to say, I really did something terrible, but our relationship is deeper than that. At that level, this ain't that much. You have to elevate your yud. You have to come back to reassessing your relationship, and then you can come back in. That's what it is. So the klal is, this is the yesod that a free opening at the bottom of a letter, it symbolizes free will. So the mem, which is open, means, guys, I'm only a king because you want me. You can go in, you can go out. The Schloss mem, it's closed, brother. I surround you. Schloss in German is a prison or a castle. Schloss is a castle. You also know as a prison. A lock also is called a Schloss. Anybody know friendly called Schloss? Schloss can mean castle, lock, prison. Okay, so this is the Schloss. The Schloss is the moat is up, brother. You ain't going out. You're here. I'm surrounding you, didn't ask you, okay? That's your memshala, he's there. So mamar patuach is the mamar that we can comprehend, we can choose to be with, choose not to be with. Meshel is, he didn't ask you, he's there. You don't understand him. It has nothing to do with you'll accept him or you won't. You can be the biggest sinner on earth. I'm there. Can't run away from me, brother. We're stuck, tied to the hip. So there's a dual relationship between God and man and creation. There's melucha and there's memshala. Ki Hashem melucha umoshel b'gayim. Ultimately, the atid levo v'olu moshim ba'atzion lishpot et ha'reisav v'aytad l'Hashem hamelucha on the whole world. That's what you pray for every Rosh Hashanah. Ultimately, that God should be recognized and acknowledged by all of creation, not just by a few not comprehending Orthodox Jews when they say it on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, they should actually know what the Jews, first of all, know what they're saying. Second of all, the world will know it too. Okay, so this is the idea of the Melucha, the Memshala. There are two different of realities there. So one has to understand that there is the relationship with God that which is direct, it comes through Torah and mitzvahs, and that's Melucha. And then there's all the other reality which is there, which is the opposite of God. That's a God we don't understand. It's beyond our comprehension. It doesn't go into our minds. It hovers above us like a halo. We know it's God, but we don't understand. So when I say, hey, what energized me, the capability of having a ham and cheese sandwich on Yom Kippur, that's also Ratzon Hashem, of that capability. But it's Ratzon Hashem, which is not normative, not revealed to man, nothing to do with man's experience. And then there's the Ratzon Hashem Agali, which says you look at yourself, you feel you have a sense of freedom, existence, and a sense of distance from God. There you have Torah and mitzvahs. Please bridge the gap and do Torah and mitzvahs and don't run away. So now let's be honest here. All of Torah and mitzvahs and all of normative Judaism lies within the perspective of memshala. Within the perspective that God gave us, that we live a life of a sense of self which is independent of Him, and we all do. Thus, we have free will. Therefore, there are mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim to bridge that gap. That whole reality exists within the within a reality of which man has a sense of independence equals free will equals mem of mimshala. But there's another parallel reality there, which man, you don't have free will. You don't live that reality, but it's there. You don't experience that. You may read about it, and you have to be able to live a complexity if you're religious, if you're Jewish. It's not black and white. You have freedom at the level of existence of Memshala, of Melucha. You have no freedom at the level of Memshala. Your whole free will is within the consciousness of Melucha. In that consciousness, there's Torah, there's mitzvahs, there's chatoim, there's avonis, there's hester panim, there's gilui panim, there's everything there within the world of Melucha. Within the consciousness of God experiences Memshala, there is no difference. There is no distance. You can't be far from God because, in infinity, there is no distance. How can you walk away from infinity? It's an oxymoron. So obviously, one has to get used to understand that Judaism demands capability of complexity. I think it's greatest blessing. I bless my students. They should hopefully after driving them crazy for 2 years minimum, they understand that reality is very complex. I once had this conversation. I must add, for years I taught Nishmat, so I had this little teeny bopper girl. She went to SAR, that's Salanter School in Riverdale. And she was telling me, oh, we had this senior project and we wrote a paper. What was it about? God. Oh, God. So I really wanted to know what, 18-year-old teeny boppers with bobby socks, what was their senior paper on? God. So he says, Rabbi, we came to the conclusion that God is good. He says, you're crazy. If he'd be alive, they put him in jail as abusive. Are you kidding? Good? Are you funny? Look at human history. So much agony. So how much happiness is there in humanity versus pain and sorrow? You guys, but Rabbi, it says he's Rachum v'chanun. It says, little one, you forgot the other part of the pasuk. Kanei v'noikem. Vindictive and vengeant. You should have written God is complex. Or rather, our perception of God is complex. He actually is not complex. Our perception of God is complex. And that's the truth. One has to understand that Judaism demands the capability of stocking and walking out into black and white boxes. We have to start thinking complexity. That's what you learn Gemara B'iyun for, to do that. I mean, that's why I'm religious. Thank God for Abaye V'Rava. You know what I mean? And Ravina and Ravashi. They taught me how to think complexity. And I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable with complexity. I get bored when it's not. The simplest things are complex. And that's a very important thing. I say this because today we live this world, the society, even the Kiruv organization, the rabbis, they teach these beautiful, oh yeah, Shabbos is beautiful, and this is beautiful, and that is beautiful, and Nachman Breslov. It is Ziyuf Torah. It's simply not true. God help me. God can really hate you. Do you know? Does God always love you? No, sometimes he hates you. Psukim and Chumash. What about that? The Teicha is not exactly a love letter. I mean, someone sent me a clip of some song, which was very cute, going out against this Sgulas Judaism of going to Karastir and I don't know what and all these different things. He says, "Do me a favor, God wants you to learn Shulchan Aruch. He wants you to learn. That's what he wants you to do, not to go to Karastir and to Miron." You know what I mean? These are simplifying a complexity. Judaism is complex. So get a PhD in sciences, okay? And Gemara. Those are two things you need to know. So this is what he says here. So the idea behind it is he says, I'm going again. God created, so the klal is that the biggest things go lower. It is the highest level of God beyond comprehension, which is the source of all sin in this world. is the God which can be perceived. No, that's Adrabah, only the good things in the world. Do you realize when you acknowledge the God of pain, you're actually acknowledging a deeper understanding of God, which is beyond human comprehension. When you say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hatov ha'meitiv, you're talking about the cozy God that feeds you and nurtures you. That's a sweet God. We like that God. Nice guy. Okay? But when you say Adayin ha'emes, you say you're beyond comprehension, but you obviously know what you're doing. You're actually, as far as I'm concerned, a jerk. You're terrible. You're kind of an oike. I'm in pain. You took my best friend. My best friend is my student is 19. He's going to stay 19 forever because he's planted in our Herzl. You took quite a few of mine. Okay? You're not nice, but you know what you're doing. I'm acknowledging Moshel beyond Melech. That is a very profound religious experience. It's much profounder than acknowledging the God of, oh, isn't he beautiful and lovable? No. The God that you pick up in Kerishtir and all these yard sites, that's the lovey-dovey God. The God which is complex is the one that we acknowledge in Dayan Emes. The heavier one, the higher one, the beyond comprehension, that is perceived in the lowest of situations. That's what the Rebbe says here. Remember, Klal Gadol Yadua, Kol Gavoa yoter, Yored Lamata, Mata yoter. Remember that. Okay, we're going to stop now and continue this next week, and we will unravel this mystery of complexity of man. Hey guys, see you.